Derrick Daye.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I am Derrick Daye. I'm the managing partner of the Blake Project, which is a strategic brand consultancy. I'm also a co-author and publisher of Branding Strategy Insider, which is the largest resource in the brand management space. So over 45,000 marketing professionals read our thought pieces daily. A little bit about me, make my home here in California. I've been doing this work for about 25 years, working with all types of brands, not just medical device brands, but many B2B and B2C brands. And today, I want to talk to you about a couple of different things. We're talking about competitive advantage today. You guys have really taken a long day listening to a lot of different speakers. And I really think you came here today to gain a competitive advantage. And I'm going to show you some of the fundamentals to do that. We're going to start into getting into a concept that we call creating brand insistence, which is basically getting your brand to a place where it's insisted upon, meaning if it's not available, your target customer will wait for it. It's kind of the place everybody wants to be. We're also going to get into some quick brand strategy concepts. I'm going to try to keep this real light and move quickly because I know it has been a long day. And unfairly, you have gotten a drink before I have. Also, we'll take a look at what it takes to make a brand promise, because that's exactly what all of you are doing. You're making a promise to your target customers. We're going to take a really quick look at that. And also, a big core to the talk and a big piece of the work that I do is brand differentiation, which is something you have to be thinking about today to even have a chance to rise above the noise in our over-communicated society. And lastly, if you guys can make it through my talk, I'm going to talk about why fighting for what matters is important, and I'm going to use Vladimir Putin as an example and a brief engagement that I had with him. But you'll have to wait to the end of the talk for that. But I promise it'll be meaningful. Creating brand insistence. We really can't start a conversation about brands without first addressing what a brand is. There are many different definitions. And the truth is that in our industry of marketing, no one's even agreed on a definition of a brand. A lot of people call it a promise. Some call it a trust mark. Some call it a value proposition. And I'm sure you're seeing some of the definitions that you use as you think about brands. But here's one that I think may kind of bring it all together. And that is a brand as a vessel. It's basically something that we have. If you think of maybe this even container here, we're going to end up pouring the meaning into this container, and your brand is that water. That's how you have to think about a brand. This last definition I also think is important. The sum of all experiences a customer remembers about you. That's what a brand is. It's the totality. It's everything. And I want to emphasize remember, because really at the end of the day, it's what gets remembered that counts. And you need to make sure that whatever's being remembered about your brand counts. Benefits of strong brands. Anyone in here think that branding is just, I was in Jamaica 2 weeks ago and someone asked me the question, isn't this all smoke and mirrors? Are we in agreement that brands matter in this room? Does it seem like it's a good thing? Good. I'm going to go through this quickly. But there's a long list of benefits of strong brands, and we all know brands that are very successful. And I won't spend a lot of time on selling you on that. But I will tell you about the brand insistence model here that all of those successful brands have in common. And that is these 5 drivers. If you want to have a successful brand today, you will have to have these 5 drivers behind the brand, regardless of what your brand is, what you're trying to achieve. The number one thing is awareness. Let's face it, you can have the best product at the best price, the best service. It doesn't matter if nobody knows. 80% of marketing budgets are spent on building awareness. Awareness is number one. Next, we're going to talk about relevant differentiation later in my talk. This isn't about being different just to be different. It has to have a relevant meaning to your target customers. It needs to matter to them. The next is value. Does your brand deliver good value for the price? Maybe it's not even about the price. Maybe your brand saves time. Whatever it is, you have to have value. Accessibility. At some point, your target customer needs to be able to buy whatever it is you're selling. So you absolutely have to be accessible. This is a little bit different in the luxury space, where luxury brands try to limit the accessibility. And that's how they're able to raise the price, where a brand like Coca-Cola is trying to be everywhere. Emotional connection, finally, is an incredible driver. In the last 15 years or so, through neuroscience, we've been able to actually prove where the pay button is and how important it is to actually have an emotional connection to your brand. So these 5 drivers are absolutely critical, and real quickly, this is how it works. Here's the purchase consideration set down here. Starts with brand awareness. Okay, I know the brand. And now we're on to relevance. Oh, okay, yeah, this is something, it means something to me. But how does it stack up in the competition? It's different, it's unique, but yeah, it works for me. And then I value it. From brand preference, I go up to purchase. I purchase it because it's accessible to me. And brand loyalty, it's there when we have that brand emotional connection. Emotional connection again. I'm going to really emphasize this. The brain remembers the emotional components of an experience better than any other aspect. Emotional connections is what it's all about. And that's what we're trying to infuse in any brand that we create. What happens when brands go undefined? Some of the talk today will be about strategy. Now, strategy is about defining what value you own in the mind. What happens when we skip that step and just get into the tactics, making an ad or making a website? Well, there's a couple of things. The brand gets defined for you by customers. The brand gets defined for you by competitors. And I'm sorry, it's hard to see the slides here, but you'll get the deck. Your employees have no North Star. They don't know what this brand is about. Your organization has no brand focus. And probably the worst thing of all, minds hate to change. What I mean by that is, once I've locked something in my mind about you, it's going to be very hard for me to change it. If at the end of this talk, I told you my name was Bob, it would be very hard for you to call me Bob as you got to know me. You locked in Derrick. Through repetition, it would be very hard. So we have to define our brands. We have to define what we stand for. A couple of thoughts here. You need to be the value creator. That's what you need to be. That's the work that you're doing now. Your idea is, you're all about creating value now for your target customers. This is a picture of Shanghai. A colleague of mine was working there with a company a few weeks back, and he told me, right when they started, he was working with the CEO brand there. When they got started, he talked about brand differentiation, and the CEO stopped him. He said, wait a second. I didn't hire you to come in here to help me be unique or differentiated from my competition. I hired you to help me copy what my competitor is doing. Okay, that's a very limited worldview. We need to think about creating new value, not just competing for the value created by others. If you create new value, the profits will follow, guaranteed. Everyone should be thinking about being the disruptor, okay? But not everyone's going to have the opportunity to be the disruptor. Many people in here, or many brands you know, will be disrupted. Here's the good news. Disruption doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. It happens for you because it gives you a chance to change your offering that's better suited for the target customer of now, of today. And if you don't make those adjustments, you go away. Here's the good news for the customers and the consumers in the world. The right brands will die. The right brands go away. That's okay. That's the natural order of things. Something new that's better comes in. Now let's look at a couple concepts here, real quick concepts to help you focus in on this value that you should be creating. First, pick an enemy, but maybe not the way that you may think. I'm not talking about your competitor. I'm talking about this valuable thing that you're going to bring to the world. Look at Tom's shoes and their enemy. The enemy is the problem of children without shoes. And Tom's, of course, if you don't know the brand, matches every pair of shoes purchased with a pair of new ones with a child in need, one for one. Who's the enemy? Or what is the enemy for you? What is that problem that you can be solving? Pick an enemy. Next, identify value that is unique to you. Here's a real simple question to ask yourself through the lens of building a brand. What would the world miss if your brand did not exist? If the answer is nothing, I'm not expecting a lot of value from you. But if you can answer that, fill in the blank, that could be your point of difference, and it should be, and that's your reason for being. This third concept is absolutely important today. Whatever it is that value you're creating, you need to be relentless and consistent about how you communicate it and how you live it. We're looking at over 4,000 marketing messages hitting people today. It's saturated. It's an over-communicated society. The chance of your message, even your idea getting through, the odds are against it. Even the great ideas. Whatever that is, whatever that value is that you represent, you've got to be relentless and consistent in delivering on that. And the key here, encode your value consistently at every point of customer contact. Right now, along the customer journey, we're looking at 21, 22 points of customer contact. Pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase. There's all of these different ways that people are coming to your brand. Make sure you're consistent at every one. And remember this, repetition is the mother of memory. The only thing that matters is what gets remembered. Differentiate or Die. This is the name of a book of a mentor of mine, Jack Trout, who passed away about a month ago. He wrote many books with his partner, Al Rees, on differentiation. And differentiation in some ways is turning into a lost art, or in some business categories has never been there. And that's because it's just too easy to copy others. That's one of the reasons. I'll get into some others as we go. But there is a internal differentiation problem. And here's why some of the brands that we know, or some of the organizations we know, don't spend more time on differentiation. The temptation to copy what works is too great. There's a commodity mindset. No, we can't be a brand. Why are we spending time on that? There's no courage. We have a leadership deficit in the country today, and I'm talking from the top to the bottom. People just don't have courage. I think there's a lot of lazy people in business, to be quite honest. There's no imagination. It's just not in the DNA. That's got to change for your brand if you're going to make a difference and survive in an age of disruption. But look what is required to differentiate. Peter Drucker here, the father of modern business management, a great quote from him. If you want something new, you have to stop doing something old. That's hard for people. It means I have to change something, especially when I'm comfortable. Differentiation also requires determination. Don't let what you can't do get in the way of what you can do. That's something that we all should embrace so we can get past the resistance and get to the big idea. These two companies, Google and Apple, can anyone in here tell me what they have in common besides being very powerful brands and probably representing more value than half of the Fortune 500? Anybody care to guess? Yep, they're recognizable. Sure, I hear some good answers there. But I'll tell you, they also represent the idea of determination because both brands each started in a garage. They didn't give up on their big idea. Differentiation requires discipline. No. Branding is the art of sacrifice. It is saying no more than saying yes. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to focus on my target customer. They have most of the answers and all of the money. Relentless consistency. Now, I give another talk called 50 Ways to Differentiate Your Brand, and there's actually more than that. I'm not going into 50 ways today. We don't have time. But I did pick out a few that I think if you bent them to your business, it could get you to differentiate the offering that you're working on now or the offering that you have. But going back to a couple slides ago, it takes courage and thinking differently. I picked some B2C examples. I didn't pick any medtech examples. Nothing personal. It's just really the big ideas when it comes to differentiation, they come from outside of your business category. That's where they are. You're not going to find them, in the next building where your competitor is. You have to look outside. Here's the first one. If you can't be number one in a category, create one you can be number one in. Think of Red Bull and Toyota. I mean, there was already soft drinks, there was already Toyota, there was some energy car, there was already automobiles out there. Both these brands came in and they stepped outside of the boundaries of their business category. Tell a story unique to you. Some of these concepts, they're not new, but to your brand, your organization, and your business category, they may be. Coca-Cola has a story. Two people have the secret recipe. Richard Branson has a story, a founder's story. What is the unique story that you can tell? Change the possibilities. That's really the space you're in right now. The last presentation on 3D printing. Think of the possibilities. Think of where we're going together with technology. It's an exciting time to be alive, and you can be part of it. Bring unprecedented optimism. Just because you may be a B2B brand and you may be in a highly regulated space, it doesn't give you a license to be dull or boring. It doesn't give you a license to not think about building a brand. And you actually have a better opportunity as a B2B brand than you do as a B2C brand. And I'll tell you why. It's because B2B brands have less resistance because a lot of their competitors are lazy and they're not thinking about climbing up the top of the mountain and being a brand. They're not doing that. You actually have a better chance with less resistance as a B2B brand. Rewrite the experience. Think of your customer experience. I mentioned touch points earlier. You could even create new touch points that actually make your experience superior to your customers. We talked about building emotional connections. That happens through customer experience. Why do you have to be like everybody else? Why can't you break free of old thinking? Old thinking kills businesses. Share values. This is one of the strongest concepts in brands. I'm using Patagonia as an example here. There's a saying about Patagonia, which is up north in Ventura. If you go to their offices on Friday, you won't find anyone there because they're all out surfing, they're all out mountain climbing, they're all out doing the things that their target customers do. So basically, shared values is, I am you and you are me. The makers of the stuff are the users of the stuff. What values do you share with your target customers? Understand what those are and reflect them. Tap into the power of emotions. Now, this is a great example. Back in the late 90s, every insurance company in the world was selling fear. That's all their ad campaigns were about. That's all that mattered. Geico stepped up and said, no, I'm going to use humor. By the way, that's the most retained form of advertising. Of course, people said, no, there's nothing funny about insurance. This is serious business. Well, Geico went the other way. What happened? They surpassed their competitors. And I've met with a few of their competitors in the last year that are trying to figure out how they can out Geico. And it just isn't working. You're in one of those spaces. There's lots of emotions to tap into. It's rich. It's a rich environment for that. Create a brand ritual. Brand rituals. Corona Extra, you need a lime. You can't have a Corona Extra without a lime. When I look at a lime, I may think of Corona. I mean, you could apply a ritual. I don't know what it is for your brand right now, but through some research and some thinking it through, I bet there's a ritual that could be applied to what you're doing. Be the activist brand. Don't buy this jacket. Another great example from Patagonia. This is an ad they ran in the New York Times. Basically, they were saying, don't buy another jacket from us. Send it back to us. You have a broken zipper, send it back. We'll replace it for free because we're trying to save the environment, not sell jackets. I mean, what can you take a stand for? These are also considered purpose brands. You know, something beyond selling something. What can you stand for? Be the unpolished brand. You know, we're in a world of a lot of fakeness, and it's now starting, those images are starting to crumble. People are tired of the airbrush thing. They want the real thing. You know, what is it about how you communicate that could make you more real and less polished? The brand promise. So, you know, part of brand strategy is thinking through what makes you unique to your target customers. And that's called the brand promise. And this is just a quick look at what it's all about. So a brand promise needs to be compelling, unique and differentiating, believable, understandable, admirable, and endearing. A brand is the source of a promise to a customer. And this gets into the template we use in our strategy work. It promises relevant, differentiated benefits. It can be expressed as only your brand delivers this to these target customers. It should be delivered at each point of contact with the customer. Everyone in your organization and your partners should know what your brand's promise is. You also need to have the strategic intent and capability to deliver on that brand promise. It can't be just some wild promise. Here's a good example, Volvo. Only Volvo delivers assurance of the safest ride to parents who are concerned about their children's well-being. This is for internal consumption. This is what they use as a guide. Now, they're trying to get you to think of one concept in the mind, which is safety. They've done a good job of owning safety in the mind. The reason this is a strong example is it's differentiating. And at the time, it was certainly differentiating. They went after the safety market and they owned it. A bad example here is Microsoft, empowering every organization and person on the planet to achieve more. It's not to say they can't do that or they don't do that, but it's not differentiating. That's a promise many other companies can keep. You need something that only you are great at delivering at, or it'd be very hard for others to. Fighting for your ideas. This is from the opening ceremonies of the 2014 Winter Olympic Games in Sochi, Russia. And I'm going to tell you a little story about that, but this is really just a teaser slide because I'm going to tell you this story first. This is the battle for Think Different. And it's relevant today because I'll get to the point, but in 1997, Apple was on the brink. It was close to getting bankrupt, brought Steve Jobs back. Things weren't looking good. A friend of mine, Rob Siltonen, was working for the ad agency that Steve Jobs eventually hired. And Rob was the creative director and copywriter for the Think Different campaign. He wrote, "Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels." He wrote those words. He went in the first day to present it, and he had 3 other colleagues with him. And there was Steve Jobs. And, he put it up on the screen, and he read the copy. And he gave Steve Jobs a copy of it, paper copy of it. And Steve looked at it, and then he threw the paper at Rob, and he said, "It's shit. It's marketing shit. Get out of my face." And Rob, who's not he's not a kind of guy that's real aggressive or anything. He's a copywriter, all right? He looked around the room, and his colleagues weren't doing anything. They weren't helping him defend the idea. They loved it they loved the idea, but they basically were Afraid of Steve Jobs. Well, at that moment, Rob said, you know what, Steve? It's not shit, and it's a thing that's going to save this company, and you better do it. And he was only 30 years old at the time. He stood up to Jobs. Jobs eventually decided to do it. But he told Rob, not because you told me to. I have other reasons. This is a case of getting a big idea. It's so hard to have a big idea. But sometimes it's even harder to defend the idea. Ideas are very fragile. You know, they're in that embryonic stage. It's very easy for people to step on them and kill them. And honestly, if Rob hadn't spoken up, there wouldn't have been a Think Different campaign. Steve Jobs wanted to do the same old stuff that other people had done. We probably wouldn't be celebrating Apple right now. Now that takes me up to the Sochi Winter Games. Here's me. I was brought in from Coca-Cola to help them with the strategy of the Winter Games. And while I was there, I was actually with my Coke Russia client. I also had a Coke US client in Atlanta. And there was a quick announcement that Putin was going to be coming into the area where the Coca-Cola booth was. And that was, you know, news. But it was big news to me because we were trying to build the Coca-Cola brand in Russia. And I thought, this is amazing. He is going to come with his entourage, his press, and we're going to get all this press. He's going to come in, he's going to drink a Coke, and then the world's going to be great. Now this is 6 months before he invaded the Ukraine, by the way. So I was excited. This was great. And, you know, we were getting ready, and then he starts coming down the hallway. And all of a sudden, my client, my Russian client, leans into me, and she says, by all means necessary, keep him out of this booth. Stop him from coming in the Coca-Cola booth. Okay, I had to digest it for a second. Okay, I'm being asked to stop Putin of wherever he wants to go, and he's got 6'6" bodyguards around him. So that just is not, I was bewildered by that thinking. And I thought, well, I have to put the brand, I'm going to have to put the brand first. I'm here to build a brand. I'm not here because I'm, maybe have a personal disagreement with Putin. So here we are. Here comes Putin down the hallway. He's heading towards us. Right next to him is Thomas Bach. That's a guy you'll recognize. He's the head of the Olympic Committee. He's at every Olympics. He sees me. He sees me because I'm there waving my arms. I want to get him in the booth. Not something my client was happy about. And then what happens? He doesn't give a shit. He walks right by. Of course he doesn't give a shit. So the point is, the real point here, you guys, is even if the brand is the big idea, whatever it is, you have to be willing to fight for it. And sometimes you have to fight your clients. Sometimes you have to fight your customers. Sometimes you have to fight your coworkers. The biggest ideas, they require a champion. What we try to do from the inside out in building brands is convert the whole organization into brand champions. They all understand what the reason for being is of the brand. They all get its value, and they're all out there carrying the torch for the brand. So I want you to remember these final points in my talk. Be ready to fight anyone to defend your big idea. Remember the 5 drivers: awareness, relevant differentiation, value, accessibility, and emotional connection. Pick an enemy. Think about what enemy you can go after. And it better be linked to something that's valuable, that makes this world a better place. Differentiate. You're going to have to do it or you're going to go away. Disruption happens for you and not to you. That's my talk. That's the publication that I publish 5 days a week. And that's all the contact information up there. So thanks for having me.